Hey, all right, we are live now. Hang on, let me fix my chat, make sure everything's working good. Okay, so looks like we're live. Everything seems to be working. Mic's working, camera's working. I need to adjust camera. No, cutting off the top of my head. Let's try that. Okay, so we'll get disclaimers out of the way, then we'll jump into it. We don't have a whole lot of people here right now, anyway, so we got to give a minute for the chat to kind of get going. Looks like we got one or two chats. Um, Hears me and sees me, huh? But okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by chat already. Let's just get disclaimers out of the way. This is a weekly live broadcast, pretty much every Thursday evening, 7 o'clock Central. This is where I am. You can come in here and you can ask questions maybe that I haven't responded to. If you've left a comment on a video, I haven't been good about that lately. But you can come in here because I do respond to pretty much every chat that comes in during the live chat, whether it's a question or something. I mean, unless you're talking to each other, I'll let that go. But we can talk about anything. The topic's wide open. Whatever you want to talk about, controversial topics, I don't really care. Just keep it family friendly. Be polite. Don't start cussing anybody. Don't be hateful with anybody. We can have differences of opinions. We can have good, healthy debates, but there's no reason to hate somebody just because they think differently than you, and no reason to be rude or hateful about it. So don't start calling people names or anything like that. Other than that, pretty much everything's game. So let's jump into it. We've got Dawn here, who said she can hear and see me, but she needs a drink. So I don't know that I don't know if it's alcoholic drink or a regular drink. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to affect me. But anyway, she said, let's see, I'm here alone. This is spooky. Where is everyone? It says running to get my headset and a drink. Be right back. Okay. And then Jack of all trades from South Mississippi is here. Good to see you. Thank you for joining and leaving a comment for me. As you guys probably already know, I don't have topics planned out for the live broadcast. I kind of let the chat kind of dictate how things go. So when there is no chat coming in, I don't have a whole lot to talk about. I need to fix that. I say that every single time. I need to have something planned out to discuss when there is dead time in the chat. But anyhow, let's get through this. We got a couple of chats coming in now. We got Saxon Wood Cabinet says, how do I know if my rabbits are pregnant? They made a nest a week ago, but no babies as of yet. Well, do you know when they were bred, or you're saying they made a nest? I mean, I'm having a hard time trying to figure this out. Do you know when you bred the rabbits, or are you keeping male and female together? If you are, you should probably separate them. You should control the breeding so you know when it takes place, and you can count on right about 30 days from the time that the doe was bred is about the time that she should have babies. If you've got nest material in there, I never put nest material in there. Okay. Saxon Wood Cabinet says that's the thing I seen the breed. I think you're saying you saw them actually breed, so you know that when it took place. I'm guessing. It's really hard to know if the rabbit is actually pregnant or not. You can try palpating. That's incredibly difficult to do, though, and it's not something that's super reliable. Even if you don't feel babies, doesn't mean that there aren't any in there. So that's going to be a hard thing to do. If you have known when they were bred, you can count on pretty much 30 days later, that's when she's going to have her babies. Generally, they don't start building a nest until right about the time they're ready to have them. I'd give her another 4 or 5 days at least and see, how she does. But if you do know the date that they were actually bred, 35 days from there, if she hasn't had them by then, it's probably going to be a false pregnancy, and you should try to rebreed her. Hey, there's Alan Pulley. Hopefully that answers your question anyway. I'm sorry if I didn't. If I didn't ask some more, we'll get back into it. We'll go into more detail if we need to. Alan Pulley says, hey, Chris and all. Hope all is well. I'm doing well. Hopefully you are too. Sage Wolf says, hello from Northeast Ohio to everyone. Hello to you too, and thank you for joining. Dawn is back, I guess, from getting her drink. Says hello to everyone, so hello to you. Robin Homestead says, hey, Chris and everyone, hello to you. Buck Reynolds from Claremore, Oklahoma. Hope everyone is well. I'm doing well. Hopefully you are too. Claremore's just down the road from me, not too far. The Will Rogers Museum they have there? I think they have a Will Rogers Museum there. I think that's where Will Rogers was from, Claremore, right? I believe. Like I said, just down the road. Hey, there's Scrap 5000 says, what's up, y'all? Greetings from New York City. Smash the like button. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. George Gainey says, howdy from North Georgia. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Life Done Cheap with Lee is here. Good to see you. Let's see. Mike Kano, I think it is, from Gory, Texas, says hello to everyone. Hello to you. And Life Done Cheap with Lee says, let's see. My Holland Lop had her first litter of 3, and she ate them all. Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry to hear that. That's a first litter. I mean, you probably already know this, but first litter, they're always kind of a mess. Not always, but generally kind of a mess. Things like that happen on first litters. Not really any indication that it's going to be that way all the time. Just rebreed her and see how she does on the next litter. Give her at least a couple of tries. She'll probably get the hang of it, and you shouldn't have that issue again. Hopefully you don't anyway, but I'm sorry that happened. Andy says, let's see, everybody from Southwest Michigan got an inch of much-needed rain yesterday. Yeah, we're getting way more rain than we need here. It's still raining. Not right this minute, but the rivers are all way up around here. We're under a flood watch right now. We've got rain coming in tonight. It looks like pretty heavy rain. A few storms. There's a big storm system moving through. And then it's supposed to rain on tomorrow. It's supposed to rain Saturday. It's supposed to rain Sunday. It's supposed to rain Monday. It rained yesterday. It rained the day before a little. We're getting way too much rain. But, hey, I'm glad you got the rain that you needed. I don't know how much we've gotten so far. But yeah, it's way too much. Like I said, we got flood warnings going on, or flood watches going on right now. The rivers are all way up. I haven't even been able to get out and do any fishing at all because it won't quit raining long enough to let the rivers drop back down to normal. Don says, we had rain all day the day before yesterday, tornadoes, and all day yesterday, all day. And we totaled out at just a mark over 1/2 inch. Really, all day, and you only got a 1/2 inch of rain? I want to say we got like 1 inch of rain day before yesterday. Let me check real quick. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Let's say so far in June, this is the 5th, keep in mind. In June, we have had 4.275 inches. 4.27 inches total in the last 5 days. There's a 30-year average of, well, that's for the whole month, but we're only 5 days in. So, yeah, 4.27 inches first 5 days of June. Let's see. Saxwood Cabinet says, I'm all the way in Melbourne, Australia, and love your channel. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And all the way in Australia, we've got somebody else here from Australia that's usually in the George, not Gainey, George. There's another George, I think, that's in Australia. If I can get the names right, I'm not getting mixed up. Pretty bad about mixing names up, but he's in Australia as well. I don't know where in Australia. I realize Australia is big enough that the odds of you knowing him are probably slim. But either way, thank you for watching my channel. I appreciate that. You said, I've learned so much about quail. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad that you're getting what you need out of it. Don said, 2 days of rain. It was stupid. Yeah, sounds like, I mean, I know what it means. It's like we've got so much rain, like I said here, that it's just like we're just waiting for some sunshine. We got a little bit of sunshine today, but it was mostly cloudy all day long. Rained a little bit earlier today, and then again we're getting rain tonight. It's yeah. Don says everything is wet around us, and says, wow, you got rain for sure. Oh yeah, we've had a lot. Farmer Marshall's here, the urban gardener, says, hey Chris and chat, hello to you, thank you for joining. Tony from Toronto, good to see you. Cindy Rapp from Minnesota is here as well. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Jacob Wolf says, listening in tonight while I put 3 30 by 36 inch rabbit cages together from Bass Equipment. Chris, what's your favorite cage size for does? I always go 30 by 36 for plenty of space. That's the size I use for all my rabbits. 30 by 36 is my favorite cage size. And it just, like you said, gives plenty of room for the does. And I just don't see any reason to use smaller cages. I just use that size for all of my rabbits. So that's my favorite size for sure. Bass, interesting, Bass Equipment is not very far from here at all. Less than an hour drive is where they're located, or right at an hour drive probably. It's where they're located. Maybe not quite an hour. Um, Shane hastily says, "Hello, Chris and viewers. We got close to 4 inches of rain here in East Texas yesterday. Interesting. 4 inches of rain in East Texas yesterday. That's a lot in one day for sure. What part of Texas are you? I mean, East Texas, but where specifically? I lived in East Texas for a little while, for about 8 years actually. But I've been back in Missouri. From Missouri, moved to Texas for a job. Was there for about 8 years. Moved back. I've been back in Missouri since. I think it was 2008 when I moved back here. It may have been a little bit before that, but anyway. Jacob Bull says, "Yeah, Bass is in Monette, Missouri. It is. Yep, just down the road. Are you a Missouri person as well? Are you local, or did you order them?" Clifton Buck says, "Hello, Chris and everyone from South Mississippi, listening to you in my back pocket while feeding the farm." Well, hey, do what you got to do, right? Thank you for joining the chat at least a little bit, and thank you for joining the live broadcast. We appreciate that. All right. And the chat has died down, so. What do we talk about? What have I been doing today? So, Don says, "If I go to Monette again, I'll go by Bass. Hubby can do work, LOL. I will do Bass." Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, you're in Illinois, right? That's ways from you, though, isn't it? Jacob Wolf says, "I'm in Southeast Ohio. I just really like their products and supporting small businesses, so that's where the majority of my rabbit stuff comes from." Yep, I don't blame you. Cindy Rabbit says, "I'm sitting here watching a bear tap the electric fence." Like in your yard, like I'm guessing, or your field or whatever. On your property, you've got a bear tapping the electric fence. I'm sure he won't do that very often. I mean, very many times. Probably figure out that it's not good and it's going to run him off. But I'm guessing that's what the electric fence is for, right? We have bear in Missouri, but we don't have a lot of them. We had one actually in the outskirts of town. It's been several years ago that they had to, capture and relocate. Capture and relocate. I'm sure they probably euthanized it. But anyway, very seldom do they actually. There's not a ton of them. We don't see them very often. I've never gotten a picture of one on like a trail cam or anything like that, so I have no idea how many there are. But anyway, there's enough. They're opening up a season, I guess, but I don't know that they're in this part of the state real heavy, real thick. Cindy Rapp says, "Right next to my garden." Well, that's interesting, I guess. Hopefully it doesn't get into your garden. Section 1 Cabinet says, "Can you breed father and daughter and vice versa for meat rabbits?" Yeah, you can definitely bring back to their parent. That's okay. That's considered line breeding. And it's a pretty common thing to do if you've got really good genetics, something really strong presents itself in the offspring, and you want to continue that. You can breed it back to the parent. You want to avoid really breeding siblings together, but breeding back to the parent is okay, and it's actually an acceptable process, acceptable practice, I should say. Scrap 5000 says, "Chris, did you see the betrayal by the Supreme Court? Daniel denied taking up the AR-15 in the Standard Magazine capacity ban case." No, I didn't see that. I didn't know there was something going before them on that. So they denied taking up the AR-15 in the Standard Magazine capacity ban case. I haven't seen that at all. So there's a case about who's banning the Standard? Is this like California or something and they're taking it to the Supreme Court to try to overrule what California ruled on it, I'm guessing? Yeah, that's not good. They should have definitely taken that case. John says, "It is a way, but I used to run 5 states and all of Missouri for sure. I also lived in Camdenton and Lake of the Ozarks for years." Oh, okay. So that's not terribly far away. A little bit far, but not terribly. Let's see. Buck Reynolds says, "Will Rogers is from Oologah, Oklahoma." Oh, is he? Okay. But there is a Will Rogers Museum in Claremore, isn't there? Let me look that up real quick. I got to see. Yeah, it's in Claremore. Will Rogers Memorial Museum in Claremore. I'm pretty sure I've been there when I was a kid. I think my grandpa took me. Um, Buck Reynolds says, but his memorial is in Claremore, Oklahoma. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Jacob Bull says, yes, always breed down and not across the family tree is what I've heard. I have also bred aunt to nephew, and it was fine too. Yeah, when you start getting that far away, it's definitely okay. Life Done Cheap with Lee says, here in Ohio, we have gotten 6.11 inches of rain as of yesterday. I'm sure it will go up with all this rain that we're getting today and into the weekend. Just for June. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Because this is usually the stuff that we're getting in like April and May, not in June. Usually we're wrapping it up by June and we're getting into the summer pattern with not as much rain. I'm not complaining. Well, I am complaining in a sense. I kind of wish it was a little bit more spread out and not all at once, but at the same time, it could be a lot worse. Scrap 5000 says, Chris, yes, 2 separate cases, states banning AR-15s and high-capacity mags. I forgot which states, though. So there's a state actually banning AR-15s. That should be illegal for sure. Let me look that up real quick. See what I got. Let's see, state bans. Some states like Maryland have implemented their own bans on specific assault-style rifles, often after mass shootings. It's a bunch of propaganda. I don't know. Yeah, luckily I live in a state that's still free, and you can still buy an AR-15. So that's good. And I don't know. It's just crazy that people think AR-15s are such scary guns, or they call them assault rifles. It functions no differently than any other rifle. And it's actually much less dangerous than my 30-06. My 30-06 will shoot further, it's a bigger round. But nobody thinks that that's scary because that's typically a hunting round, but you could do a whole lot more damage with that. And I'm not saying anybody should but banning guns is not going to stop people from doing crazy things like, shooting places up. That's a terrible thing that should never happen. And I condemn it, but banning any kind of gun is not going to stop that kind of stuff from happening. We just had a crazy guy throwing Molotov cocktails at a crowd just a couple days ago. Had nothing to do with the firearm. In fact, he tried to get a firearm, couldn't, because he's, couldn't get it legally anyway, and still went out and committed a heinous crime. Bill Cox says, hello all. It's Colorado and Maryland. Okay, Colorado and Maryland are the two. Oh, yeah, terrible ideas. But Rabbit Homesteading says most bad gun stuff happens in gun-free zones. Yeah, indeed. That's true. I mean, I don't know if most, but a lot of it does. You may be right. There's a whole lot of misconception about the stats around that, and we're probably preaching to the choir mostly. I mean, I don't know. There may be some people in here that are anti-firearms, but for the most part, I think we're probably all closely on the same page on that. So we're probably preaching to the choir. But yeah, you're right. Most of the really big profile stuff that gets on the news anyway does happen in gun-free zones. It's ridiculous. Gun-free zones are the stupidest thing ever. The stuff that doesn't make it on the news is whenever somebody is planning something like that and some concealed carry holder or something like that stops it. That never gets on the news. But anyhow, where was I going with that? Also, oh yeah, the gun stats that they bring up about the number of deaths per year by guns and all that kind of stuff. If you take out like suicides and gang violence, it's actually pretty small. There's not that many people at all. And AR-15s are used in hardly any of that. So it's a ridiculous excuse to ban guns, to step on our Second Amendment rights. And those that think that, we shouldn't own guns or own, heavy, machine guns or whatever. The Second Amendment was clearly for that. The Second Amendment was not about hunting. It was about protection and protecting ourselves specifically from a tyrannical government. So there's no reason that they should have more powerful weapons than us, according to our Second Amendment. That's what it comes down to. But anyway, Bill Cox says, assault is an action, not a rifle. Absolutely. You're right. Yeah, there's no difference. I mean, it's just because it's black. I used to have a shirt that says it's because I'm black, isn't it? And it was the picture of an AR-15. But then, some people, actually my white friends got upset about that. My black friends did not. None of them were really that upset, probably because they know who I am. They know me, and they know I'm not a racist or anything. But my white friends got upset. I don't think they were offended. They were probably just worried that somebody would be offended. So I had to quit wearing that shirt. But it was a good one. All right, so what else we got going on? Chat's kind of slowed down here a minute. So let's see. What was I watched? Listen to a podcast put on by a church that I've attended. I haven't been attending in a while, but it's a good church. But it is a church that I have attended before. They got a new pastor. I haven't been back since I got the new pastor. Nothing wrong with them. It's not like I'm not boycotting them or anything like that. Just haven't happened to be back by there since that happened. So anyhow, they put out a podcast. So I listened to an episode of that, and they were talking about, it's a Presbyterian church, which I used to be an elder in a Presbyterian church. So I'm good with Presbyterian doctrine. I for the most part, there's one thing, and they talked about on this podcast today, that I'm not going to say is wrong. I just don't know where I fall on that. And that is, Presbyterians tend to be Reformed, which, if you don't know what that means specifically, probably sum it up like Calvinism. It's a little bit more than that, but just for simplicity, Calvinism, and specifically the idea, the doctrine of predestination. That's the one that I'm just not really sure. And I've struggled with that for years, trying to figure out. Luckily, I don't think that's a deciding factor. That's not one of those things that decide your salvation. But it is still one of those things I struggle with. I don't know I don't know if I fall more on the Calvinism or more on the Arminianism, more on the predestination or free will. I can see evidence for both of them in the scriptures, but I can't figure that one out. I don't know. I don't know where I stand on that one. So anyway, that's just some of the things that I've been on my mind today. So thought I'd fill some dead air with that. It's probably not anything interesting to most of you guys. Joyce says, hello, all from Western Oregon. Just got my eggs from Gopher Ridge Quail, hoping for a good hatch rate. Well, good luck with your hatch. I hope it goes well. Hope that you have a fantastic hatch. I'm not real familiar with Gopher Ridge Quail. I've heard of them. I need to look them up real quick. But I've heard of them, but I'm just not real familiar with them. There we go. Gopher Ridge Quail Farm. Maybe I met them. I don't know. They may have been at QuailCon or something. I really don't know. Associated with Katernik's Corner, so in Georgia, huh? Interesting. I have to look more into that a little bit later. All right, Scrap 5000 says, Chris, sooner or later I'm going to convince you to convert to Catholicism. I kind of doubt it, actually. Yeah, there are some doctrinal issues I have with Catholic, and I'm not condemning Catholics. I don't mean anything like that. It's just there are some issues that I do have with Catholic doctrine that I can't resolve. I don't see any place in biblically for a lot of that stuff. And I'm not saying that Catholics aren't saved or anything like that. I mean, I believe there's probably some of them that may not be, but that's just like any other denomination or any other doctrine, I guess. Katrina says, whichever side you fall on, we have a choice to do a 180 and follow his commands. Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of think we do. That's the free will kind of idea, right? But at the same time, I mean, the Presbyterians aren't the only ones that believe this, but Presbyterians, their doctrine is predestination. I mean, it's not a matter of our choice. We are called, by God. And they use that verse in Romans, one of the main verses they use. That's not the only one, but one of the main verses is in Romans. It says, for those he foreknew, he also called, and for those he called, for those he foreknew, he also predestined. For those who predestined, he also called to be sons of God, or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording, but it's pretty similar to that. Which means that, the way they interpret that is, we really don't have any choice. It's not a matter of us choosing to follow God. We're either called by God. We can't do it on our own. We're dead completely without God. And there's no way we can on our own come to God. We only do it as a result of him calling us and causing us to choose him. which, is not I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's not bad. It's just, is that exactly how it works? Because the flip side of that, and I see that verse and I understand where they get that from, but the flip side of that is verses like in Matthew where Jesus is saying, how often he's standing over Jerusalem. Jerusalem, how often I've wanted to gather you to me as a hen gathers its chicks, but you were not willing, which seems to speak of free will. So it's just a confusing thing to me. And again, luckily, it's one of those fun things I like to contemplate and go through, but it's not one of those. I don't think I'm going to stand before the gates of heaven one day and God's going to say, okay, which one is it? Yep, got it wrong. You're out of here. I don't think that's going to happen. That's not, the doctrine that we have. That's not an essential of the faith, so to speak. Bill Cox says they're in South Georgia, Douglas. Yeah, that's you're talking about Gopher Ridge. Yep, I looked them up. Yeah, I saw that. Not super familiar with them. Is it Gopher Ridge? Did you say? I can't remember now if I got the name right. Yeah, Gopher Ridge. That's it. So not super familiar with them, but hey, I'm sure they're a great quail farm. Zohar says my grandmother was Catholic, my aunt Lutheran, and my mom was Mormon. Grew up confused. Yeah, absolutely. And, if anybody's Mormon in here, I don't mean to offend you, and I don't mean to, I'm not trying to be hateful about this at all, but Mormon doctrine is, I have serious problems with Mormon doctrine. It's not Christian. It's something else, entirely. And again, I don't mean that as a insult to anybody that may be Mormon. I'm not judging you for that. That's not what I mean. It's just that, the doctrine is not sound doctrine. Shane says, got a Medicoop X in the mail yesterday after hearing about them on the live last week. Wasn't impressed with the consistency of the Little Giant or Farm Innovation. This one seems to be right on. Awesome. Medicoop X. I don't know what that is. I'm not familiar with that at all. Let me look that up real quick. Medicoop X 28 incubator, huh? Well, it looks pretty nice. Yeah, it looks like it might work pretty well. I don't see why it wouldn't. A jack of all trades 89 says, Shane, I've got 2 Medicoop incubators and love them. Well, there you go. There's glowing recommendations for them. Hopefully they work well for you. I had really good luck with my Little Giant. It produced tons of hatches for me and really good hatches. And fantastic customer service. The best I've seen from any company by far. Don says, I have Gopher Ridge birds. They're true jumbos for sure. Well, awesome. Robin Homesteading says, I don't know what to believe in, but I do believe there is something. Well, I'm definitely, these are things. I'm a Christian for sure. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in the Bible. It's all there. There are many reasons that I believe that the Bible is true. One of those is, there's tons of extra biblical, sources outside of the Bible that speak of Jesus and prove his existence and even the resurrection. And those, I think, are key things. We have more evidence about him than we do many of the, ancient leaders that people just accept as, being fact. But the Bible alone, the prophecy that's fulfilled in the Bible, read Isaiah 53 sometime. And it's just clearly speaking, it's prophecy about Jesus. It's clearly Jesus that they're talking about. And it was 500 years, 700 years, I think, before he was even born. So those kinds of things really, caused me to really, just convince me that it is true. Not only that, but just the things in my life too. But you don't want to rely on just feelings, because feelings can be misleading. It is the truth, the truth. And if it is true, if all those things happen, then, it clearly says, it clearly says this is the one way, the only way. And if everything else is true, then that is true too. So that's, I don't know. I'm not very eloquent with explaining that, I guess, but hopefully that helps. Either way. Farmer Marshall says, went to Catholic school, too far away from the Bible. If the worst person in the world got hit by a car, was dying, I could take some water, bless it, baptize you, and you're going to go to heaven? With a question mark. Well, yeah, there are some issues I have with Catholic doctrine. One of those is that whole doctrine of purgatory, and I don't honestly know where they stand on that anymore, so that may have changed. But I don't know exactly what you're discussing right there. You're just saying they got hit by a car, they're dying. You could bless them and baptize them right there, and they would go to heaven. Now, I do believe in like deathbed salvation. I think it happens. I mean, we've got evidence of that in the Bible. The thief on the cross being saved right then. He wasn't baptized or anything. He just says, I believe you are who you are, and Christ says you'll be in paradise with me tonight. I mean, that can happen for sure, but it's about a conversion of the heart, not about the baptism or the actions of other people, what they do, any of that kind of stuff. None of that happens. It's your acceptance of Christ, and that's it. That's it. That's all it is. It's total. None of the works that we do, nothing. And I understand what you're saying about like the worst person in the world, but honestly, we are all enemies of God. We were all, before we were saved, we were enemies of God. We're all the same boat, whether we're the worst person in the world by our standards or not. We were all sinners, and it's no more fair for us to get in than it is for that person to get in. That's the whole talent, the parable of the talents. The workers came at the beginning of the day, and the workers at the last hour of the day all got the same wage. That's the idea of grace. It is grace. It's an unearned gift. So yeah, we are all, there is always time. As long as there's breath in your lungs, there's always time to repent, to accept Christ and be saved. But it's not based on somebody baptizing you or blessing you or any of those kinds of things. None of that stuff matters whatsoever. It's about just accepting Christ. That's it. Don says, I have 70 Judd's Quail Farm eggs in the incubator now, and another 72 on the way for the end of this month. I'm not familiar with Judd's either. Who's messaging me? Oh, my wife. She can wait till I'm done. Don says, Judd sold me when we put this. Judd's sold me when we put his hens on the scales, and they are jumbos. I don't know who's Judd's. I don't know who that is. Is that anyway? Katrina says, glad to hear that, Don. I am going to try Gopher Ridge next year. Is that who Judd's is? Or Judd is Gopher Ridge? Interesting. Steva says, have you ever needed to trim your rabbit's teeth? I've never had to do that, and I'm glad, because that seems like a horrible thing to do. I don't like the idea. I mean, it just makes me cringe thinking about trimming their teeth. It's a horrible idea, but I've never had to do that. I do give them sticks and things like that to chew on so that they have something. But luckily I've never had to do that. Zora said, where do I order eggs to obtain 14-ounce plus adult Coturnix? Well, I don't know that I've weighed my birds, but they're pretty good size. Mine are Myshire Farm eggs. I don't know what their weight is exactly. It sounds like Gopher Ridge is a good supplier of some good jumbo eggs. Maybe somebody else can give you some good suggestions as well. Let's see. Doina Campion, I think it is, says, in one of your older videos, you mentioned eggs, meat, and vegetables. Do you still grow vegetables? If yes, could you maybe do a video about it? I have done some gardening videos. I'm actually not gardening this year. I'm taking a year off, and I'll pick it back up next year. So you may have to wait a little while before more gardening videos come out. But I've done some videos on gardening, growing vegetables. I've got a link in my in all my videos where you can go and get like the green stock garden, tower garden. It's not really, I don't think they want to call it tower garden, but anyway, vertical garden, I guess. If you're looking to grow things like, it'd be fantastic for growing things like radishes, carrots, even lettuce. My sister's actually experimenting growing green beans in it. So far, it's going pretty well. You can do a whole lot of plants in a very small area. But yeah, I'll do some more videos at some point. If you have specific questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you. But I will get to those videos at some point. I'm just taking a year off of the gardening this year. Andy says, John 14:6 says, Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except for through me. Amen. Farmer Marshall says, that's what I was taught. No conversion was required. They could be unconscious. Yeah, that's not biblical either. That's not what the Bible says. So, Bill Cox says, if I'm not mistaken, Gopher Ridge also has chuckers. I never know how to pronounce that exactly. Is it chuckers? Am I saying it right? I don't know. But yeah, they may have them. I know that there's several places that do that as well. Joyce says, the thief next to Jesus on the cross went to heaven because he believed at the moment Jesus told him that he would go with him to paradise. That's right. Farmer Marshall says, anyway, back to regular stuff with a smile. Yeah, I don't mind talking religion at all. Like, that's one of my problems is I don't get super offended whenever other people talk about their religion if it's different than mine. I mean, we may disagree, but that's okay. I'm not going to be offended by that because I figure if not for the grace of God, I would be that way too. And I don't mean that like in an arrogant way or anything like that, but I just mean that I'm not special because I have the truth. I am in a way, but not in that way. Not better than anybody else because I was right there with everybody else before I was saved. And anyway, my point is I'm not offended by that stuff. So I forget that other people do get offended by that stuff. And I tend to just talk about all the controversial stuff and not worry about it. And then I don't understand why people get mad. But anyhow, that's the way I am. So Joyce says, Gopher Ridge quail have great temperaments as well. Well, that sounds good. I mean, always bigger birds, great temperaments. Sounds great. Mike Kano says, I've heard of chicken math, but quail math is real. I got 12 chicks, and I'm already thinking about an incubator to have more. Yeah, that's true. Pretty much, I mean, any kind of small animal math is correct, right? I mean, you get rabbits, you want more. You get quail, you want more. You get chickens, you want more. Just chickens happen to be, I think, the most common backyard, livestock that people raise, and that's why it's chicken math. I always say it's like everything tastes like chicken because that's the most common white meat that we're familiar with, non-beef, that we're familiar with. If we lived in a different society where like we primarily ate squirrel, everything would taste like squirrel or, whatever. But you get what I'm saying, right? Katrina says, Mike, my daughter took it upon herself to collect eggs and put them in the incubator, and they just went in today. Well, that's not a bad thing, is it? Well, maybe it is. I don't know. Maureen says, my quail are laying. How soon can I start hatching? Check your fertility. Generally about a week, 2 weeks roughly after they start laying. They should start laying some pretty good fertile eggs. But check your fertility. Just grab, take 10 eggs or 5 eggs or however many you want. 5 or 6 at least, I would say. Crack them open, pair of egg scissors, dump the yolk out, and look for that little white spot on the yolk. If there's a faint bullseye ring around that spot, they're a fertile egg. So if you have 10 eggs, 9 of them are fertile, start collecting and incubate. That's what I would say. But generally, 2 weeks roughly after they start laying. Farmer Marshall says, we're on the same page, Chris, about, I think you're talking about me not being offended by things that other people, where they have differences of opinion in me. Yeah, I don't get why people get so upset just because somebody thinks differently than them on something. So I just don't get it, and I don't even think about it because I'm not offended. So I just talk about that stuff, and sometimes it's not appropriate, I suppose. Maureen says, I had to call 11 roosters today. 13 roos to 10 hens were too many. Yeah, 13 to 10, that is definitely too many roosters. So it happens. If you're going to incubate eggs, you're going to get probably too many roosters. It happens every time. Joe Sandy's here, says checking in late, but glad to be here. Hey, we're glad you're here too. Thank you for joining. Bruce says, do you call your birds because of temperament? Yeah, if I get super aggressive birds, then yeah, I call them for sure. I don't tolerate that. I don't want to pass that on and breed that into my genes. So, my genes, that sounds funny, but you know what I'm saying, into the genetic line of my birds. So I call it. Katrina says, I had to call 6 to make room for 12 chicks, convinced I need to make a separate hutch specifically for me. I just, excuse me, I had somebody ask a comment I haven't responded to because I've been terrible about responding to comments lately, but they asked if I keep my meat birds separate from my breeders. Kind of, yes. I have 2 hutches, and generally I use one whenever the new birds come out. I put them in that one. Sometimes I'll take, like, if I know I'm going to be replacing my breeders with that next batch, I'll just throw them all in that hutch with the breeders. And then at the end, I just pull out the ones that I don't want, just, leave the ones that I do want to become the new breeders. Everything else gets processed for meat. But sometimes I do keep them separate as well. It's nice to have separate hutches anyway, just for things like that, or move birds around if you need to. Joe Sandy says, my latest hatch is 8 weeks old now, 27 quail. I don't know how to choose which roosters to keep, but I need to do it soon. I just go basically by size. I mean, I just pick the ones that look the biggest. Those are the ones I keep. 340 Quail Farm is here. Says, made it. Hey, we're glad you made it. Thanks for joining. Joe Sandy says, the crowing is probably driving my neighbors crazy. You'd be surprised. I mean, maybe, but chances are they don't even realize. They probably just think it's songbirds. My neighbor's fence, I mean, it's right next to the quail hutch. His house is a little ways away, but it wasn't, I mean, they lived there for a year and a half, maybe 2 or 3 years. I don't know. And then one day he happened to be out there working. He had his back gate open. He's a privacy fence. And he had his back gate open, and I was out there too, and I said something, hi, how you doing, something like that. He came out and he says, what do you have back here? He says, you're looking at the quail, and he says, for the longest time, I thought it was just birds, just birds singing, songbirds and stuff. And then I noticed you had like some cages or something, so figured you had something, but I didn't know what it was. I mean, you didn't have any idea for the longest time, so you'd be surprised. None of my neighbors have ever complained about my roosters crowing. It doesn't bother them a bit. Hello, Governor says, hello, I'm looking into getting chickens for eggs. What would you say is a good ratio for hens and roosters living together? For chickens, if you're looking at, I mean, it depends. Do you want fertile chicken eggs that you can hatch and produce more chickens with? If that's the case, I don't know what the chicken to rooster to hen ratio is, but I'm going to say it's pretty similar, 1 to 5 or something like that. But I don't really know. You'd have to research. I'm not a chicken expert. I don't raise chickens. But if you're not worried about fertile eggs and you just need a rooster around to help protect the flock, well, heck, you only need like one rooster. I mean, that's about all you need. Joe Sandy says, how do people that keep their roosters separate and only put them with the hens for a week or whatever to mate do it? Yeah, I don't know how that would work, because if I don't even know why you'd want to do that, honestly. It doesn't make any sense to me. But if I kept roosters separate and then I just threw a rooster in there to mate every once in a while, he'd get the tar beat out of him. I mean, you throw adult birds in with adult birds, and they get territorial. They don't like that. So I don't know how that would work. I've never done it. And I don't understand the reasoning behind it. It doesn't make any sense to me. But we'd have to ask somebody that does it. Farmer Marshall says, going to start collecting eggs for hatching next week. That's a great tip on determining if some are ready for hatching. Oh, yeah, about checking the fertility on them? Yeah. I mean, that's what I do. I just check fertility, and then if the fertility is good, collect and hatch. Bill Cox says, I'm looking into Winola Ranch stack cages. Yeah, they make some good cages, and they're super good people. I mean, just super nice. If you've ever met them, it's like it's a family. It's like 2 brothers and a sister, and they got the older brother that's, I think, the primary guy, and then the 2 younger siblings that help out a lot. And they're always so well put together. I mean, well mannered, just super good, nice people. He's a veteran. They're just. I can't say enough good things about them. They're really good people. They did sponsor. We gave away one of their cages for my 100,000 subscriber giveaway, and they were one of the sponsors of that. So support them if you can, because like I said, they are a good group of people. Katrina says, my quail start crowing at 4:30 a.m. about 15 to 30 minutes after the other songbirds. I only hear them when the windows are open. Yeah, they're not super loud. It's kind of the same thing. Janet says, somewhere in Europe, a lab is trying to sex chicken eggs. Yeah, good luck with that. I don't know. And even if they could do it, I mean, what's the point? You're not going to be able to do that in your backyard. But anyhow, Joe Sandy says, my roosters crow even in the middle of the night, and we hear it with the windows closed. They're having a competition. Yeah, you must have them real close to your house. They'll calm down. Whenever they first hit age, it's like a teenager. They're all hopped up on hormones and they are screaming all the time. But they calm down after a week or two, a couple weeks. And my roosters hardly ever crow. Occasionally in the morning they'll crow, but it's not a common thing. Don says, I have a roo that I put a hen with for a few hours. He has 3 hens. I can actually put him in with them in their cage, which is unusual, but to leave him, he is too hard on them. Yeah, I imagine that would be the other thing too. I'm surprised they let him just kind of, they just deal with him and they don't beat him up. Don says, I'm going to collect their eggs and make new breeders where I can have a real covey of them. That's how I do it. It's just easier for me. But, I'm not saying you can't do it the other way. I'm just saying I don't know how, I don't get why people would want to keep roosters separate. Janet says, because of the fuss over dispatching males as early as possible. I don't know. I'm not sure what that was a response to exactly. But either way, Shane says, let's see, now that I have an incubator, I think I found a local source for eggs and hope to get started with quail. Don't have any birds now, but we've raised chickens, ducks, and geese in the past. Quail will be easy for you then. I mean, they're, in my opinion, way easier. Katrina says, Don, I dream of spiral breeding someday. I've heard of that. I've never actually done that, but Life Done Cheap with Lee says, what do you do with your rabbit hides? Honestly, I usually just throw them out. I don't do anything special with them. I don't bother tanning them or anything like that. They're not really super high quality because you're processing them at such a young age that they're not super high quality hides. So they're good for, I mean, you could do stuff with, I suppose, but they're not, nothing you could like market or anything like that as a high quality hide. Desert Homestead says, I have a hutch similar to yours. How do you go about sorting them? Chase them all to one side and then only let the roos go to the other side to get a head count, or put roos out and put in temp cages. Yeah, it's a little tricky. I kind of just like, I kind of get all, I focus on like whenever I'm going to like replace my breeders, like I'm going to leave a couple of roosters behind to breed. I'll just focus on getting all the roosters out of there. And then until I'm left with two, and that seem to be the two biggest, I try to avoid all the biggest ones, go by size, get the smallest roosters first till I have like two. And then I focus on the hens and do the same thing with the hens. And I'm chasing them back and forth to one side to the other. So, it's a little chaotic, but that's how I do it. Dawn says, it's because they are nice hens. I'm not keeping him because I want to. It's what I have right now. So I'll collect the 3 ladies' eggs. And this is, I don't need to do spiral breeding really. So yes, I can't remember all the specific details of spiral breeding. I mean, I'm familiar with it, but I'd have to look up all the details of it again. But anyhow, so no, I think I understand what you're saying. Is if we're to leave him in there, basically pulls all the feathers out of the back of their head because he's overbreeding them. I just deal with it. Most of my hens are fairly bald, all the time. But so I don't. But it's not a big deal. They're not getting overbred. I keep 1 rooster for every 5 to 6 hens. Joe Sandy says, I tried putting a separate layer of hardware cloth 6 inches below the floor wire to keep raccoons pulling their legs off. It did not work for me. What a mess. What a mess, meaning the poop wouldn't fall through. You could use a bigger gauge wire. That's a good thought. I didn't even think about that it would start collecting on the bottom because there's nothing really, quail aren't walking on the wire to cause it to vibrate and to stepping on it and pushing it through, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that makes sense. It would probably do that. But you could, if you had like some just like rabbit cage wire or something, I mean, you don't need tiny little hardware cloth squares. You could use a bigger, not gauge, but a bigger square wire, probably even chicken wire would work just fine, and put that up that would let the manure fall through maybe. It's a thought. Sorry, checking the phone notification there real quick. It's all good. So yeah, that's a good thought though. Using 1/2-inch hardware cloth would probably catch a lot of droppings. Jacob Wolf says, Chris, how would you say the grow out on a silver fox is? Would you say that it takes them about an extra week compared to New Zealand's? In my experience, purebred New Zealand's usually 5 or 8 to 9 weeks, roughly, sometimes 10 to get them to roughly 5 pounds. So you're looking at probably 3 weeks longer for the silver foxes. They're usually closer to 12 weeks to get them. Joe Sandy says, if a raccoon can get their hands in, it will rip their legs off. Yeah, I know. I agree. I have not had. We've got raccoons. I've had them come around, but I've not had any of them get up to the hutch. They. I've got trail cams. I put the trail cam out there and got pictures of them where they'll like reach up and then they just give up and move on. So I haven't had any issues with that. Don says to Joe Sandy, a friend of mine did that and made it removable to hose down. I think he also used a larger wire too. Well, that's a thought. Scrap 5000 says half-inch hardware cloth will let almost all droppings fall through. Yeah, if it's the main flooring for sure, but if it's a floor underneath that, like where nothing is walking on it, nothing's agitating it, so to speak. I don't know. I mean, I could see it catching a bunch of that stuff. Desert Homestead says, I use chicken wire underneath my hutch and rabbit cages, big holes to let most of the poop fall through. Quail poo does stick to the bottom wire. Joe Sandy says it doesn't let them through. Believe me. Yeah, I believe you. Dawn says, I was trapping a gopher last week and caught a raccoon. The coon sat in the trap just digging and filled the trap half full of dirt. No room for the coon. How were they? They were sat in the trap, like reaching through and digging dirt into the cat trap. That's weird. I don't know that I've ever seen a raccoon do that, but yeah, that's strange. I don't know. I've only caught maybe one or two raccoons myself, though. I did have a pet raccoon one time. It was a young, like an orphan baby. Mother got hit by a car or something like that, and it was young. I mean, it was still on the bottle, like still hadn't been weaned yet when I got it. It was a cool pet. Eventually got to a point though where I was kind of a nuisance because they have hands, so he would open his cage, get out in the middle of the night, go rummage through the refrigerator and stuff like that. But he was cool. Don says that coon reached out digging dirt outside. I watched his arms fit right through and digging. Yeah, I can see that. How are we doing on time? We got 8 minutes left. Chat's kind of dying down. I don't have much else to talk about. I already talked about the things that were on my mind for the day. But Don says, a friend when I first moved here had a pet coon. He walked on a leash every day. One day he let the coon get on me. I hated its claws sharp. Oh, yeah, that was a problem with him. I would take him to the river with me when I went fishing because he's a wild animal. I mean, I figured if he runs off, he runs off. No big deal. He'd swim around for a little while I was fishing, and then he'd swim up to me and crawl up. And if I didn't have like a shirt on because it's summertime and I'm in the river, that was incredibly painful. He'd crawl up and sit on my shoulder. I'd always have to make sure I had a shirt on at least because, yeah, you're right. They have sharp claws. Bill Cox says, would there be any problem having quail and rabbits in the same 12 by 20 building? I don't see why there would be. As long as you have plenty of ventilation, shouldn't be a problem at all. Sage Wolf says, I have a hutch like yours, Chris, and I put 2x4 fencing around the legs and have a door in the front so I can take out poo and wood chips for composting. No additional fence under the original floor. Yeah, that probably works pretty well. That's a good idea, too. Just fence the whole thing off, right? Yep, that would work. Or if you have the option, just put a string of electric fence around it. I've always said this, take some aluminum foil, smear some peanut butter on it, fold it over that electric fence about every, couple of feet or something like that. Anything that comes up after your quail is going to be drawn to that peanut butter. They're going to stick their tongue on that aluminum foil, and then they'll probably never come back. Dawn says, it crawled up me like that, but I had shorts and short sleeve t-shirt, and I think it hung on harder to get on the shoulder. And at that point, I didn't want one for a pet anymore. Yeah. No, I understand. You're right. They have some sharp claws, and that's not the most comfortable thing in the world to have them crawl up on you. But it's still, he was a pretty cool pet. I liked having him. Dawn says to Sage Wolf, that's the coolest idea ever. That is a great idea. I agree. 6 minutes left. Randy says, listen, I set a blink camera on my pen. Within 1 week, I got 4 raccoons, 2 cats, and a red-tailed hawk. It's really fun watching the raccoons get shocked by the fence. Yeah, I bet. Joe Sandy says, I did the electric fence for a while. It worked, but was afraid the 3-year-old granddaughter might get zapped accidentally. Ended up doing what Sage Wolf did. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I mean, yeah, I get it. I'm not saying you should let your 3-year-old granddaughter get zapped by the fence, but I don't know. When I was a kid, it was one of those things parents told you, hey, leave that alone. And if you didn't leave it alone, you found out why they said leave it alone, and you never did it again. I mean, you never forgot that, But yeah, a 3-year-old's a little young for that, I guess. Probably don't need to teach that lesson quite yet. We got Sharon Hoffman says, hi, my name is John. First time on the live. I'm guessing you're using somebody else's account. That's why it's coming through as Sharon. But I'll probably forget that and keep calling you Sharon because I'm terrible with remembering all those things. But thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Andy says, don't forget to hit the like button. Yeah, I appreciate that, Andy. Joe Sandy says, true, Chris. Yeah. Yeah, I've touched electric fence when I was a kid. Once. Only once. But I touched it when I was an adult, too. That was accidental. Once. I did. Reminds me of an old movie. Remember that movie, Johnny Dangerously? If anybody saw it, there was the character in there. Every time he would do something to him, hung him on a coat rack. My brother hung me on a coat rack once. Everything was like that. Anyway, kind of funny. Joe Sandy says, yep, smarts. Yeah. I mean, it won't seriously hurt you, but yeah, it's not fun. You don't want to keep touching it. That's for sure. My dog hit that electric fence one time. Good grief. You'd have thought somebody just beating him. Like it was, he cried and cried. Like, you'd think he was getting shot. Desert Homestead says, I peed on an electric fence once. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things you don't do more than once, that's for sure. Especially when you fall backwards on a sharp rock. Oh, yeah. I can imagine Joe Sandy butt hurt for a while. Yeah, you hit the electric fence, made you jump, you tripped, you fell backwards, landed on a rock. Yeah, that's not fun. That's bad. I don't laugh at you. I'm laughing with you because I've done stuff like that too. My grandfather was an electrical contractor. And when I was young, I worked for him from the time I was like 8 years old on. I worked for him pulling wire, wiring up receptacles and switches and all that kind of stuff. And we were working on a house one time. I was probably 12 years old, maybe at the time, maybe 13. I don't know. Working on a house, wiring it, and they had the electric on. There was some kind of issue. I don't remember what it was exactly. He wanted to check continuity between in the circuit. So he had me go outside to a receptacle that was on the same circuit as he was. And he had his flashlight. He didn't have a good continuity light with him for some reason, but he had his flashlight rigged up as a continuity light. So he was going to touch it to both sides of this one to see if there was continuity. And he needed me to complete the circuit on the side. So I had a piece of copper wire that was bent in U, and I was just going to plug it into that receptacle. So I asked him, I said, is the power off? He said, yeah, power's off. I said, you sure? Yeah. So I stuck that in there. Man, the power was not off. It was off after that. That kicked the breaker. But boy, I got a jolt. Good thing it was only, 110. But Don says, my friend told me, watch my wife's eyes get big. He got her to touch their electric fence. He laughed and said, see, I told you, the size of quarters, LOL. Is he still married? That's horrible. Joe Sandy says, I have a blind quail out of this hatch. It's a roo. He's the only white bird. He is absolutely beautiful. And he's blind. Did he get like his eyes pecked out, or he's just born blind? That's kind of weird. Hopefully he does okay. Dawn says, Chris knows she divorced him, LOL. I don't blame you. That's terrible. I mean, I play jokes on my wife, like I jump out and scare her and stuff like that, but I draw the line at like, you see these jokes on where the people are throwing things on their spouse, like, flour and all that kind of, I don't do that. That's a little too much. Sage Wolf says, yeah, I had to do that mod within a week of building my slightly rednecked hutch because I lost a bird because of a raccoon. Well, it's a great idea. You got a way to figure it out. All right, guys, I got to wrap this one up. We're right at 8 o'clock. Time for me to get going. And should be back next week, hopefully. Don't see any reason why I won't be. And until then, as always, God bless. You guys have a good evening. See you next week.